Okay, let's move on. And in this lesson, we're going to be looking at how to add dynamic markings like hairpins, for example, some tempo text, some ritandos, some articulations, some slurs and ties, making the music come alive a little bit. But before we do that, I'm going to show you how to put copyright text in. But I'm not going to use the front score. I'm going to use a different way of doing it. If you come up to the top of the menu here, come to File, and then down to where it says Project Properties. Okay, left click that. And then here, I'm going to put my copyright notice. I'm going to put something like copyright. Now, if you don't know where the little C symbol, the little copyright symbol lives, if you press Option G on Mac, I think it's Alt G on PC, you'll find that symbol will appear. And then I'm just going to put my name in here. Oh, if I can spell it right, and the date, and I'm going to click OK, and it's added to the bottom of my full score. And if I go up to the top of the parts here, and I'm going to open my oboe, and I'm going to open the oboe, you'll see it's also added in the parts too. So score wide text appears everywhere, which is a really handy thing to have. And it saves a lot of time adding text in every single part. It works exactly the same way as the title did earlier on. Now, you'll notice that I've added some more notes here. I've changed the notation up a bit. And before we move on, I want to show you also that if you've made a score and you think you've got the order of instruments the wrong way around, it's no big deal. You can change that anytime you like. If you come across to where it says palettes, layout and properties, if it's not open, perhaps you've got the properties or the palettes open, you want to open the layout tab with a left click. And all you do to move the order of instruments is left click the instrument you want to move and then drag it to where you want to go to. Boom. And you'll see the flute is now above the oboe, which is a more traditional placement for it. So that's where I'm going to keep it in this score. Now let's start adding some dynamics. I'm going to left click the first note I want my dynamics to appear at, and we can do this in a couple of different ways. If I open the palettes tab, okay, you'll see the dynamics should be listed in this list here. If it's not, remember you can add it from the Add Palettes tab. You'll find it listed, you left click it, you select it and you add it, okay? But it's already in the palettes here, so with that note selected, I'm going to simply click a dynamic marking and you'll see it'll appear in the score, okay? Likewise, I might put one on the oboe. I might have a different marking like so. Now, adding dynamic markings with the mouse or selecting it like that perhaps isn't the quickest way. Perhaps the quickest way is to use keyboard shortcuts. So I'm going to select this note here. I'm going to hold Command down, press D, and I'm going to select that marking. Let's do that again. Let's change that. So it's Command D. I'm going to left click the F marking, the forte, and there it is. So just so I can do that again, left click the note you want, Command D to open up the selection box. Now I could, if I wanted to, type the dynamic in like that and then escape out and it adds it. Or I could, if I wanted to, select it from the choosing from the slider here. Let's do that and do it that way. Okay. Also, if I wanted to add dynamics over both of these staves at the same time, the same dynamic marking, currently you can't add that with a shortcut. Command D doesn't work. But with the selection made, come across to the palettes tab and left click the dynamic you want, boom, and it adds it across both staves automatically. However, hairpins work slightly differently. If I wanted to add a hairpin to this bar, for example, I could select the bar, come across to the hairpin, left click it, and it adds it, which is a normal way to add them. But I can also add them with shortcuts. Okay, so let's highlight these two bars, and I'm going to press Shift and the comma key, and it's going to add my hairpin across those two bars here. Okay, now if I make this with an existing dynamic, if you click it, you'll get this selection box up. If I make it slightly quieter, now I'm going to select that entire range, press Shift and the full stop key, and it's going to add that hairpin, that diminuendo, across those bars. Really quick. But you can also add hairpins with keyboard shortcut across multiple bars, just like that. And again, if we could have them going down here, and I could have them all the way to the end. So it's very quick once you know where things are to work with the keyboard shortcuts for dynamics, okay? And very quickly you can start getting the score looking absolutely gorgeous. To add slurs is just as simple. I'm going to select those two notes. Now I could, if I wanted to, find it from the drop-down menu in the palettes tab, but I'm not even going to bother doing that. I'm just going to press S, and it's added a slur between those two notes. Or I could slur the entire phrase with a range selection, or I could slur just an individual note to the next one by selecting the note head and pressing S. To add a tie, for example, to these two notes here, select the note and press T will add your tie in. Okay, now it's worth noting that if I try and tie these two notes together, it won't do it. Ties tie notes together, as the name implies. So if the pitches are different, that operation won't work. Let's say I want to add some staccato markings to this score. I'm going to select these two bars, for example. Now I could come up to the toolbar here and left click the staccato marks, and they will be applied to the score. In fact, let's just zoom in a little bit so you can see it better. And they're applied to the score here. But there's also a keyboard shortcut, and that is Shift S, and they've just been applied. Now you can do that across multiple bars at the same time if you like. So they've been added to all those notes in that range selection. And you can do that for all the articulations. So if we wanted to have legato or accent or tenuto, they've all got keyboard shortcuts, as you can see them on the right hand side of the name there. So let's add a legato marking with the keyboard marking Shift O, and then you'll see it's added. I'm going to put a tenuto mark with Shift N on that note there. And again, if I wanted to put tenuto markings across these, Shift N, and it's done it across the whole selection range. It's very quick. Once you know how to select them and you use the right keyboard shortcut, adding dynamics is really quick. Just as quick as adding notes is, really. Let's say we want to add some tempo text. Let's say we want to put a ritando across these two bars. Okay, to do that, we can come across to the tempo section and come down here to where it says ritando and add a rit marking in. And then if we wanted the tempo to go back to 60 beats a minute, select this bar here, add our tempo, and it works. Look, this is going to sound terrible, but let's see how this sounds. I'm going to select this first note, and up here you'll see the tempo marking, what it is playing back currently as it goes through this ritando, and then it will go back to 60 beats a minute. It's going to sound terrible, but you're going to get the idea. Okay, so yeah, it sounded terrible, but you could see as it worked through there, it slowed down slightly in the ritando and went back to 60 beats a minute at the tempo marking. We can adjust these markings so the playback is slightly more convincing, and I'll be showing you how to do that in the playback section later on. So that's how to add articulations and dynamic markings and tempo text with keyboard shortcuts. So let's move on to something else.